If you don't have a routine, you'll get into a rut.
My name is Merrill Dubrow, CEO of Mark Research. I'm a 35-year veteran of the research and insights community and the host of our podcast, On the Mark. On the Mark is focusing on executives and thought leaders in the world sharing their insights, strategies, and personal experiences. I promise this podcast will be filled with tough, pointed questions with real, insightful, and emotional answers. Today's guest is my good friend, Steve Henke, the founder and president of Harpeth Marketing. Welcome to the On the Mark podcast, Steve.
Merrill, it is a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Thank you.
All right, let's just get right into it, Steve. Hey, describe your company a little bit and how you help companies move their business forward.
Happy to do that. We are a marketing agency that works exclusively in the market research industry. And I've been doing that now for almost 8 years. We help our clients achieve their business development objectives, and whether that's building awareness or positioning themselves in the marketplace, generating sales leads. And then we do that through a variety of services, whether it's outsourced marketing, sales training, consulting, those kinds of things.
So, I pride myself in getting a lot of emails and I read a lot of stuff, and there's probably not a day or two that goes by that I don't get an email, or whether it's a Twitter feed or whether it's something on LinkedIn or whatever from you mentioning an article that you're sharing. You guys, you're really great with that. Is that something that you had to work within, Steve? I mean, you've been doing that for all, 8 years, or did you kind of have a routine now and best practices that you could discuss and share with the listeners?
It's a really interesting question. It comes from a couple of things. One is because I guess we sort of have to not just talk the talk here, we have to walk the walk. And so the things that we do from that perspective, sharing information, newsletters, blog posts, I think those kind of things are a really good fit for the research industry. And I started off purposely trying to do those kinds of things, and over the years have just sort of fine-tuned the content and the frequency. And I know you are a reader of our blog. We just published blog post number 427. So I think it's important to have that consistent presence in the marketplace.
Yeah, a lot of, it's interesting. I had a blog for a long time, Steve, 10 years, 3 times a week. I wrote them all. And it's hard. I mean, to keep that energy going for 427 posts, kudos, high fives, fist bumps to you and your team. No, because it's hard. It really is. How do you figure out what you're going to write about? I mean, how hard is it? Do you know what next week's topic is?
Right now, I might. It's interesting. We certainly talk to our clients about creating editorial calendars so that you can plan out your content ahead of time. And I do that to a certain extent, but I'll tell you, most of my ideas, frankly, come from real life experiences. So, if I have a good flight on Southwest Airlines flying home from Dallas, it might trigger an idea, and I'll turn that idea into what I hope is a helpful article on something. Or if I have a bad experience at a restaurant, and no, restaurants are not in our industry, but, the whole customer experience thing that can happen at a restaurant, those sort of lessons are applicable everywhere. And so I generally turn those real life experiences into things that I think my readers would like to learn about.
No, I like that. I really, really do. So, I'm a guy of routines in the business world. There's a few things, 5, 6, 7, 8 things that I do probably every day, and then move them once I've done with them, I move them forward to the next day. Are you kind of like a routine guy too in terms of operating your business?
It's so funny you ask. When I was getting out of college and starting to think about what a career was going to be, I had an uncle who's since passed who was a sales rep for the old Westinghouse company for forever. And he gave me some advice one time. He said, if you don't have a routine, you'll get into a rut. And it took me a long time to figure out what that meant. But I am absolutely a creature of habit. I do the same things. I mean, and I even have them on my Google Calendar every morning. So I absolutely make sure they happen. There are certain things I do every day. Get to the office, make a cup of coffee, and go to my LinkedIn feed to see what the first thing is. Then I look at email. And so, yes, there is that kind of thing. And I go to the coffee shop, a local coffee shop, every Saturday morning while my wife is still sleeping. And that's where I spend some time working on my business, not just in my business. So yeah, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for some semblance of routine in my business life.
So that's interesting about Saturday. So you're almost the norm of Cheers, right? If anybody is listening, in terms of every Saturday at 6:30, you show up to the coffee shop. They probably don't even ask for your order. They give it to you with your little croissant or muffin or whatever you're going to eat that day. And you're accomplishing what? Are you reading the newspaper? Are you writing a blog? Are you strategizing for the next week? Is it yes to all of those things?
So you obviously been observing me. So yes, they have my order ready for me when I walk in the door. So I don't know if that's because I'm a regular or because I'm just predictable, but yeah, that happens every Saturday. And so yeah, I am working on those things. That's where I start my blog posts for the following week. That's where I do my weekly sales and marketing metrics and kind of keep an eye on the business. You know, how many visitors are coming to the website? You know, how's my email doing this week? Those kind of metrics. If I've got some big client projects that I just didn't get to during the week, you know, working on a proposal, those kind of things. That's what I do on Saturday mornings.
How do you motivate yourself? How do you continue to push things forward? Because, you know, back in the day with a large staff of 100, you know, everybody pushes themselves, right? And you kind of have deadlines and you'd be accountable a little bit. Now life's a little bit different because you're the king. How do you motivate yourself?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, at 2020, you know, we had a staff of 100, and so my responsibility was to make sure these people, you know, that I made payroll every week, so these people could have their lives. It was a lot different, and it is ostensibly me now. And the motivation is, to a certain extent, just I'm that guy. I want to have some level of success in my life. That's part of it. Part of it is I am motivated by my clients. I like the work that I do. I mean, that's why I do this. I love what I do, but I make commitments to our clients, and I want to make sure that we deliver on those commitments. And there's a certain sense of wrongdoing if I don't achieve those commitments. And then there's Mrs. Henke, and Mrs. Henke has certain expectations as well that I better meet. Happy wife, happy life. So she and the grandkids now are the primary reason that I keep doing what I'm doing.
And how involved is Mrs. Henke in terms of? I mean, do you basically say to her Friday night during that dinner or that dinner date or whatever it is, hey, sweetie, I just want to let you know I accomplished this. I sold this much this week. Hey, I satisfied these 3 clients. I got 2 proposals I sent out. I mean, do you do like a download almost?
Probably not to that level. Yeah, that's always part of dinner conversations is kind of, you know, hey, how was your day today kind of thing. And generally it's the highlights. Picked up a new client today, or, you know, we're waiting on to hear back on a proposal. Don't get into great detail. And not that she isn't interested. Clearly she's interested. But I try and not bring too much of my work home. And that's fine. But, you know, if there's something pending that's big, you know, I told her I was going to be interviewed on the Merrill Dubrow podcast today. And that's big news.
Did you? And did she say she probably tried to talk you out of it, Steve? She's like, that guy's an idiot. Come on.
No. It was Merrill who? No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly.
So that's part of it. I mean, it's, you know, I don't have an office to debrief with. I don't have many morning staff meetings with a team of 10 anymore. It's, you know, I do have a project manager in-house that and we talk about clients obviously every day, but no, Mrs. Henke's my Lisa, by the way, not Mrs. Henke. I better not call her that. Lisa is who I will debrief with at the end of the week just to let her know how things are going, because it's our company now. It's not just, I'm not just an employee.
It's interesting. I obviously do enjoy a lot of your content, and I would suggest that any of the listeners, they should check you out, because you really have a nice writing style and a nice way about yourself in terms of taking some challenging aspects of the business world and putting them in a simplistic fashion and being able to have lots of takeaways quickly. So I really commend you, and hopefully the listeners will take me up on that and start to really see what you're all about. But when I look at some of the stuff that you've published, I hate selling part 1, developing new clients. And I hate selling part 2, ensuring repeat clients. You know, think before you act, or marketing sales for the marketing research firm. I mean, obviously these things are stuff that you support, but I would suggest that, I don't know, maybe 98% of CEOs in the research industry have that blind spot who just can't. It's very hard to hire and train, motivate, and compensate salespeople. And I know your whole business is predicated on that. Why is that?
It is a great question. It is clearly a blind spot in our industry. Here's what I think about that in terms of why it's a blind spot is we are an industry that is project-based, right? We're an operational industry. Look at any research firm, and what are they talking about at the staff meeting? The project's coming up. It's what we do. It's what 95% of employees at a research firm are doing. They're involved in some part or form or fashion of a project. So there's a bit of a cultural issue to it in terms of trying to understand the value of selling. And then I think there's just the whole idea that if we do good work, clients will find us. And maybe that was true 15, 20 years ago, but certainly in this day and age in our industry with all the consolidation and the technology and DIY and purchasing departments and all that stuff, you can't just sit there and wait for business to come to you. In some form or fashion, you got to go out and sell and try and proactively bring business in. And I think that's still a blind spot for most leaders in organizations.
Yeah, which is interesting because there's a direct correlation between that and not hitting numbers, right? No, I mean, seriously, if you're sitting there staring at the phone to ring, which I'm not even sure it's the phone anymore, it may be online, but if you're looking at the phone to ring and you're very reactive, you're not proactive, I mean, I think you're in a situation where it's very troublesome and you're not going to hit numbers. I mean, look, one of the first things I did this morning, and we talk about routines, is I sent out 34 LinkedIn emails through the LinkedIn site, probably 100 words in terms of a cut and paste, in terms of sharing some of the benefits of our new products and how we can help move their business forward. And the reason you notice I didn't say 35, I didn't say 30, I said 34. Now, the reason I said that number is because that is the actual number because I keep track of it on a daily and on a monthly basis. I could tell you I sent out 311 of them last month alone. And got, a hit rate back of about 11%, which is not horrible. It's pretty good. Like it to go up. But it's very interesting that CEOs in this day and age do have that blind spot about that because life is harder. I mean, my belief is that business is much harder in 2019, 2020 than it was 5 or 6 years ago. Do you agree, Steve?
I do.
Why do you think that is, and how do you help CEOs navigate through that?
Well, I'll only go to something you said, which I think is part and parcel of this whole issue is you sit around and wait for the phone to ring. And yeah, you're right. It's not the phone anymore. There was a book that came out years ago, and I honestly never read the book, but I thought the title spoke volumes, which is Hope is Not a Strategy. And I think that's a lot of it. I hope that our clients will come back. I hope that the phone rings. I hope people find our website and read our blog post. You can't do that. It doesn't work that way anymore. It is a crowded market space out there in terms of marketing, messaging, and things like that. And so you need to get out there and be part of that and stand out. And it's just not happening.
Yeah. I mean, Steve, I think you're 100% right. I mean, I think that it is much harder today than years ago, and you've got to be much more proactive. And I think that I assume that some of the things that you really, really teach CEOs, and when you go in and they utilize your services to move their business forward. That's something you really feature on, right? Isn't it?
It is, and in actuality, it's what we do for them. When the light bulb finally goes off for a senior leader at a firm, and they say, yes, we have to be proactive. Then the next question is, okay, how am I going to get it done? And oftentimes it's a bandwidth issue. They don't have the bandwidth internally. They probably may not have the expertise to do it internally. And so they find us and we do it for them. And through a relationship with us or whatever agency they choose to work with, they are assured of a frequent and consistent level of activity and presence in the marketplace. And that's where it's got to start. You can't just post a blog and assume that's going to change your world. You got to post like you and I do, multiple times over an extended period of time for that to sink into the psyche of the marketplace and to become a recognized thought leader. It takes time. And that's another one of those blind spot issues is sort of almost an unwillingness for it to take time. Well, if I'm going to spend money on marketing, why isn't it working tomorrow? It just doesn't work like that. Another challenge. Yeah. And I think one of the and you were just talking about sort of some of the other issues in the marketplace. And one of them that I try and work with our clients on, because I think it is one of the troublesome spots, is there's a lot of sameness in our industry. If you were to pull up, randomly pick 3 research firms, pull up their website, cover up the name, and read them, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart. The vast majority of research firms provide the same services to the same kinds of clients in the same kinds of industries, and it's hard to tell one from the other. So imagine you're a buyer. How do you choose? Developing a unique position in the marketplace, developing a true point of differentiation, it's really hard work. But it is something that I think is lacking for 90% of the firms in our industry.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. So if we were on Family Feud and Steve Harvey was saying, hey, what are the top most frequently used words in the insights industry? What is it? Innovation, agile, technology, AI? What did I leave out, Steve, right?
The most common offender of that question, Merrill, is actionable insight. It is on every research firm's website. We provide actionable insights. Of course you do. That's what all research firms do. And so that to me is one of the big offenders. Or, we partner with our clients. You get senior level involvement with all of our clients. And those are all good things. Don't get me wrong. Those are all very good things, but everybody is saying them. What are you saying that's different? What message are you taking to the marketplace where that buyer at, Coca-Cola goes, oh, that's different? Most firms don't have an answer to that question.
Yeah, and you help them get to that answer, which is great. So what are the qualities you think today you need to have to be a great leader, Steve?
That's an interesting question. I once heard the definition, sort of the difference between a leader and a manager, and it really stuck with me. A manager does things right. A leader does the right things. And so I think there is, from a leadership perspective, is what do we need to be doing? What is the right thing for our business? I'll let my team execute it, but I need to provide that vision. I need to provide that focal point as a leader. I think the other thing, I was listening to a little video online this morning. Simon, I can never think of his name. He's on LinkedIn all the time, but he's a great business sort of philosopher. And I am a big believer that you can't take care of your clients until you take care of your employees. And as opposed to focusing on the top line or the bottom line, focus on your employees. Take care of them. The rest will happen. And I genuinely believe that. So in terms of sort of leadership, I'm a believer in, an upside down organizational chart, that the CEO, the president, whatever, is at the bottom of the chart, and his or her job is to support the team above him or her.
Yeah, no, that's a good takeaway. When you were at 2020 and you had the staff of 100 plus, is there one or two things that you could share of how you did just that?
Yeah, and it was interesting. I started at 50, and when I left, it was 100. So we had this sort of growing curve along the way, and that in and of itself is enough of a challenge, just managing effectively through that. I think two things. One is, I think as a leader, a manager, somebody that's kind of got responsibility for people, is your people need to know what the boundaries are, the sidelines and the goal line. And so they know how they're supposed to work. They need to know what they're supposed to be working towards, not just go out and do your job, but here's what we need. Set some expectations. I think it's critical. It's kind of like your kids, right? I think that's part of it. The other is absolutely frequent communication, good news and bad news. Once a quarter, I would stand in front of the entire team in all of our offices. I'd fly around the country and present the same presentation to make sure that everybody knew what was going on. So I would, for example, I'd present financials. Now, in a relative way, we didn't get into all the weeds necessarily. I'd talk about all of the customer satisfaction scores and how each division was doing, how each product line was doing. I wanted everybody to know that this is where we're doing a great job and here's where we need to improve. And we held the leadership, the facility directors and folks like that, accountable to those sort of customer satisfaction numbers. And it made a huge difference. The quality of the work that we started churning out over time improved from day one to my last day there, an order of magnitude, because we were all communicating and playing by the guidelines.
Steve, I really like how you frame that. Great job. Thanks again for listening to Steve Henke. This is the On the Mark podcast. My name is Merrill Dubrow. Have a great day.
Thank you, Merrill.